Hello everyone, this is Pal Ponder on Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about the La Nina building as we head towards fall and the winter months. So if you do like weather-related content, please subscribe to my channel as I will upload daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it. Let's take a look at the overall latest Climate Prediction Center update on the Enso outlook. And what we find here, they update this every second Thursday of the month. And we've got an Enso neutral, which is predominantly what we've been in currently right now. They expect that to continue through the rest of summer. But as we transition into fall, they fully expect a La Nina developing to last all the way through the fall months, as well as the winter months of 2021 and 2022. So if we take a look at the graph down here below, you can definitely see the red is what they call an El Nino. You can see it's barely a probability. That is not likely to happen. But here is the La Nina, and then we have the Enso neutral here. So as we go through and get deeper into here's August and September and October, you can definitely see the trend is favoring more towards a La Nina here, and then it really starts to dominate as we head towards peak season of hurricane season, which is September and October here, and then it just amplifies even further as we go deeper into October, November, and even into the winter months of the heart of winter. So what does all that mean going forward? So let's take a look at the Southern Oscillation Index. Now, I follow this pretty on a daily basis, and man, you look at the trend. I mean, this has been an incredible trend as of late. Here's the last 3 months. This is April, May, and June timeframe. You can see this is all pretty much predominantly right along the zero line. That implies we are in an Enso neutral, which is pretty much about average. But notice the trend as the last 30 days, this has been a dramatic upswing and a change towards a La Nina. In fact, we're pushing at a 16 on the 30-day average, and the 90-day average is almost a 7. So what that basically means is once you get to about 8, that typically implies the La Nina is starting. So what you're looking at is, you got waters out here in the equatorial Pacific. As the southern jet stream comes across, you tend to have cooler waters in the equatorial Pacific. So it's less likely you have a less of a chance or less of a chance of above average rainfall. But since we've been in an Enso neutral in the last 90 days, yeah, if you definitely recall, we started in a La Nina back on the peak hurricane season last year. We're talking like September time frame, and then we moved to an Enso neutral in April. And what that did over the last 90 days, you can definitely see with that amplified southern jet being in that Enso neutral phase, that really pushed the heavier rains into the south. So it wiped out the drought in Texas. It pretty much wiped out any drought you had in the southeast, and it created an active monsoon as well. So going forwards, we're starting to see the beginning stages of this transitioning back, really kind of where we came from, back into a La Nina, eventually kind of drying out this southern piece here in the southwest, and eventually filtering in to Texas as we go into the deeper part of fall and winter. So if we take a look at the latest CFS V2 model, it's got the trend even amplifying further into a La Nina, deepening right now, and it just amplifies even more as we trend further into fall and further into winter. Here's the equatorial Pacific of the cooler waters, like I mentioned, right along the equator here. And as we go deeper into fall and the winter months, you can definitely see these waters tend to cool even more. And so that, you have the northern jet stream, the northern jet, a little bit more amplified and active, and the southern jet not as active because it's not going to have those warm waters to pick up and move across like we've seen as of late with being in that Enso neutral. So what's that mean going forward? When you typically go into La Nina, like we saw last year, it peaked around September 10th, and I don't need to be telling you, you know what happened last time and during hurricane season. when September and October, that just really cranked on the jets for the hurricane season. It really amplified that. And we ended well above average, and it was, right at peak season. So we're kind of seeing the same thing again. We're literally almost there. I mean, we're just maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks away of probably being qualified for a La Nina. So if we take a look at the trends going forward with the latest JMA, this is the Japanese model. It updates every Thursday here. You can definitely see we've had all the action as of late in the Pacific. But eventually that's going to be transferring over into the Atlantic side as we go deeper into August, because we see a lot of upward rising motion indicative in the blue shaded area here in and around the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, as well as the Atlantic. So I do expect an uptick in activity, especially after, say, that August 10th time frame and for the rest of August. And in fact, here's a look at the Indian Ocean, all the way across into the Indian Ocean. And if you look south here, this is that on that August 13th time frame, you see really an abundance amount of precipitation to the south of into the Indian Ocean here. That typically implies that you're going into what they call MJO phase 2. Now, phase 2 is where we were when Elsa was around back on July the 6th. So if you take a look at the phases and what they actually mean, here's a chart currently where we are right now. This is July the 30th. This is August 13th. So for the next 2 weeks, let me zoom in here. Today is July the 30th. If you look here, we're predominantly in phase 2. So, I'm sorry, phase 7 here. So phase 7, we're going into phase 8. So you saw what's happening currently. We have a cold front that's coming into the Northeast. And look what the model's showing when we are in phase 8. We have the ridge over the top and into the Northwest with those well above average anomalies here. We have the colder air filtering in down from the Northeast into the Ohio Valley. Hasn't hit Texas yet, but once we transfer going to possibly phase 1, as this continues moving across, it puts Texas in the below average anomalies, and then eventually go into phase 2 by the time we get into that 10th and the middle of the month time frame, and that puts the below average anomalies predominantly into Texas and to much of the South and Southeast, which a lot of the models is actually showing right now, and some of the below average temperatures in the far northwest corners of the US as well. So as we move forward, what does all this mean in these phases? So currently, like I mentioned, here when we had Tropical Storm Elsa, Hurricane Elsa at times impact Florida, we saw an amplified phase 2. That is the most amplified phase in the MJO. That's typically when you have your most active phase for tropical storms and hurricanes. It formed well off into the MDR region. It stood together because they still had a great upward rising motion phase, and that's where we've been. That was on July the 6th. But look what happens as we go into phase 4, and that's why we've had more of a calming period in the Atlantic. So because we are expecting that, a lot of sinking air indicative of a lot of the blues and around where it has been active is out here in the Pacific where they have the oranges, right? That's where Hurricane Felicia formed, and then it fizzled as it got closer to Hawaii in the blue shaded area, right? And then as we transferred into phase 6 and 7, you saw it's still very amplified in the Pacific, and that's where we have a lot of the action currently, and not much action into the Atlantic side. But we're now transitioning into that more favorable phase of 8 and 1, and you can definitely see some of the oranges and yellows start to come back into the the Gulf of Mexico, right along the East Coast, and more into the Caribbean. And of course, as we go trending into phase 2 and 3, that's just a little bit more active phase as well. So we're going into that time frame into August. Phase 8, 1, 2, and 3 of definitely a little bit more active phases, especially as the trend gets closer and closer each day, trending back towards La Nina. So as we go forward, Let's take a look at some of the modeling as we look at between the now and the next 2 weeks. It's already showing an uptick in activity, a possible tropical storm development as we get into that 10th and 11th time frame of the probabilities trying to increase. The MDR is slowly, warming up now. You typically have the Saharan dust kind of dwindling and fading away as the MDR regions, the cooler waters are replaced right now with some of the above average temperatures, and it just amplifies this period more, especially as we go into these more active phases as this MJO that moves from eastward gets into the Atlantic and becomes more enhanced on the Atlantic side versus the Pacific side. So as we go forward, you can definitely see, even on some of the ensemble members, we're starting to see a lot more areas of lowering of pressures out here in the Caribbean and the Atlantic as we go into, again, that August 10th, August 14th timeframe. So there's definitely trending more towards and more active phase as we go deeper into August. As we take a look forward, now this is some of the guidance that we're starting to see, some of the beginning stages of us sort of trending to a La Nina, right? So here's some of the guidance going forward of the 6 to 10 day update from the Climate Prediction Center. It has us below average temperatures down here into the deep south, into the southeast. That's implying we're going into that phase 1, phase 2, right? With the cooler temperatures. It also has some of the below average temperatures out here in the Pacific Northwest, near to below average. But we also have some below average temperatures trending to up here in Alaska as well. And then well above average precipitation anomalies, which is definitely different from what we've seen of late. We're seeing the rain start to come back into the Pacific Northwest. That typically implies that's a little bit more of a La Nina pattern than what we've been into as of late. So if we extend the view, it just amplifies even further on the 8 to 14 day outlook. So as we trend further into August, as we trend further deeper into the La Nina, we're seeing the rains pick up more in Alaska. We're seeing the colder air pick up more in Alaska, and then the wet precipitation filters into the northwest as the ridge slowly shifts away from the Pacific Northwest and starts to creep in and build more or less into the upper central US, over the top into the northeast as well. So where you're getting the below average anomalies, I do feel those are quickly going to be replaced with above average anomalies, and that is going to be the trend as we go for the rest of the summer for portions of the upper plains into the northeast as well. So as we take a look underneath that colder air, yes, we've got some snow to talk about. So it's not that unusual to talk about snow in Alaska during August, but it goes to show you that trend in La Nina is starting to be in full effect as we go deeper into August, because those below average anomalies really start to creep in Alaska, and under that it's going to be cold enough to snow in Alaska, and it'll eventually set the stage for possibly some early type activity into the Pacific Northwest as we go deeper into September. As we take a look at some of the seasonal guidance going forward for August, September, November timeframe, I do fully expect the ridge to stay predominantly further north and have these areas down to the south average to somewhat below average, because I do feel this continues to be in somewhat above average precipitation with the active hurricane season that I do fully expect. But with the ridge over the top like this has high pressure to the north. This actually causes what they call divergence underneath and helps lower the pressures underneath into the Gulf, into the Caribbean, into the Atlantic. So that is another sign that could also help amplify the hurricane season going forward, with predominantly the ridge going to be over the top like that for the rest of summer. That I'm typically what I'm expecting. So if we look at some of the precipitation trends, we can definitely see some of the seasonal guidance trending more towards a La Nina type pattern. So we have that southern jet as not as active. You typically have start to dry out. The monsoon will go away into the southwest. You'll start to get some drier activity start filtering in from the west, eventually filtering in further and further as we get deeper into the fall months. It stays active along the coast because I do feel it's going to be an active hurricane season. So you have those above average precipitation anomalies along the coastal regions of the south and the southeast, and even in the northeast. So because I do feel even in the northeast are a little bit more susceptible this year because that ridge over the top and the Bermuda High out there in the Atlantic would help steer the storms towards the United States and having more impact than they normally would from a typical season. So if we kind of zoom in and what a La Nina what you typically get in a La Nina, you have the jet stream, but the southern jet is not nearly as active. So this jet stream typically lifts up to the north, and then you also have the polar jet as well. So amplifying, lifting up, pulling in the colder air and racing down over the top. So you typically have above average precipitation into the Pacific Northwest, into Washington and Oregon and Northern California. We're already kind of seeing some of the trends going that way in the longer range data as we have a more amplified jet over the top that typically is a more snowier pattern as we go over the plains, over the Ohio Valley, and eventually somewhat getting in the Northeast as you get deeper into the winter months. You typically have a more or less drier pattern as we get on the Southwest and the South, but also implies just because you're below average anomalies as far as precipitation, as we go deeper into the winter months, it definitely implies that you're a little bit more susceptible to a lot of extreme volatility and several Arctic outbreaks as well that actually creeps all the way down into the deep South. And if you take a look, the difference between the La Nina and the El Nino, it's a dramatic difference. So typically an El Nino, which I already showed you from the Climate Prediction Center, the probability of this happening is pretty much slim to none. The chances are like 5 or 10%. It's not going to be. So if that happens, yes, you typically have a more active southern jet. You typically get a little bit more wetter pattern, a little bit cooler down here in the southern regions, and then you typically warmer in the north regions. But more or less, we're going to have a La Nina pattern, which it lifts up the polar jet, dumps the colder air from the north, amplifies the jet, has the above average anomalies, and more or less below average anomalies down to the south. And, as we trend deeper into fall and deeper into winter, we start to see this pattern kind of unfold going forward. But if we take a look, if we extend the view all the way into September, where you typically may see some of your first average measurable snowfall, yeah, the trend's already seeing, hey, we're already kind of seeing some snow is going to be falling in August. That would just trend down. I know last year we had our first snow in Denver on September 8th, September 9th time frame. We had snow in Montana. So it's not out of the question that it's going to be active again. Early on in the season, sometime in September, yeah, we could be talking snow again, and for portions of up into the Montana region, getting into Wyoming, getting into places in the Colorados, not out of the question, as I do expect that La Nina starting to come in full effect. This is typically when you see your first snowfall of the season and where you live. So if you live in the white shaded areas, this is typically where you see your snowfall before October 1st. If you're in the gray shaded areas, this is where you see it between October 1st and October 31st. Or in the pink shaded areas, November 1st through November 15th. And the purple shaded areas, you can see it trending a little bit further off to the south, November 16th and November 30th. And this color, December 1st, December 15th, we typically have to get all the way into the later half of December, going into January before we even see typically our kind of first snowfall on average for portions of the deep south, getting into Texas and Arkansas. And then just sporadic years, we don't see even snowfall sporadically. It is not a guarantee every year you even see snowfall for portions of the deep south like we saw last year. So, so I appreciate you guys watching. I do like this video, and definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after storm.